How's everybody doing? All right, a few more. I promise you can go enjoy Barcelona after this. All right, my name is Krishna Vishnubhotla, and I'm really part of a mobile security company, and our goal is to help businesses worldwide build safe mobile applications and make sure that data is safe on mobile devices. Next few minutes, again, we do a lot of business with MPoC-related providers, anything that involves COTS devices, and we'll look at a little bit into the difference between certification and continuous security. And then I'm going to spend a little time on what we've learned. We've helped about 35 providers get certified, and there have definitely been some lessons we've learned along the way, so we'll cover those. So about Zimperium, again, we are a mobile security provider. We've been around since 2014. Our pedigree is really mobile research, right? Understanding how mobile as a platform is great for business, but it comes with some risks, right? And that's where our pedigree is, and that's why we help both keep devices safe and keep applications safe. All of you are privy to this evolution around payments, right? I don't even think I own plastic cards anymore, but the key part of this evolution, as you see on the right, is ability to pay on COTS devices, right? Consumer devices. Now, it's important to understand that when these devices came out, they were meant for consumers, right? They were never really built for businesses, which is important to understand because that's where a lot of the risks come from when you think mobile apps or mobile devices. And we'll look at that. And why is that? The fundamental difference between the mobile device in your pocket and a laptop or a Mac or anything you have worked with is one thing. You might have bought the device, but you really don't control the device, right? And that comes with a certain amount of risks. A COTS device, or a consumer device as we call it, has a bunch of issues that we need to think through, especially when you're thinking payments or anything to do with sensitive data. If you look at mobile devices and mobile apps, you know, we have apps in the store and then they run on a device you typically don't own for the most part. Even if you own the device, if you have a payment app that's sitting in the store and you have a device, it's running on a device that you provided, there are a couple of different risks. One, the apps in the stores, if you have them in any of the official stores, it's very easy to reverse engineer, right? Someone can look inside your app and figure out how to exploit that application. And it takes about 10 minutes and $150 to do that. So it's not complicated. Two, when the app is actually running on a device, whether it's Android, iOS, or any flavor of those platforms, the device, it's not inherently secure. What do I mean by that? There is hardware, there is operating system, and there are apps on it. All of those contribute to a dynamic risk posture of that device, right? Long way of saying you can't just blindly trust the device, right? A new OS comes in. How do you know it's okay? How do you know that the vulnerabilities in that OS or any hardware component don't expose your application, right? The payment data, the account data, right? That's something to think about. Now, in this space, everyone, especially for MPoC, goes through certification, right? It is a long process. We work with over 30 vendors now to help them get certified, go through the process, go through the labs, provide documentation, and go to market. And this is typically an annual process. But the reality of mobile security is that the threat to your mobile application or your payments application or the payment data really starts once you go to market. As soon as you push that app to the store or you install it on a device is really where the risk begins, right? It's after you get certified. And there are several reasons for that, or several factors driving this risk. One, attacker tools are becoming more sophisticated. The biggest thing that we do for our customers and prospects is to help them understand what this threat landscape looks like, right? And the landscape consists of sophisticated techniques, malware. I mean, all of you, if you Google malware, there's a new strain of malware coming up every day. But what does that mean? Supply chain. Mobile apps today are built like Legos, meaning 70% of the code is third party, right? Because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So it makes sense, but it drives up risk significantly. And understanding that risk is really important. Zero-day vulnerabilities. You hear this all the time. Both Android and iOS platforms are exposed to zero-day vulnerabilities. But the question is, do you understand what it means to you? Do these vulnerabilities impact the devices you're using for payments or that you're providing to your merchants? Continuous platform updates, right? Android and iOS will continuously release operating system versions, patches. How do you keep up? Right? How do you know the next update doesn't crash your payment app or require you to update it of some sort? Right? So all these things that contribute to a mobile threat landscape impact the payment world. And this is what all our customers are realizing the more they understand this threat landscape. Couple of factors that I wanted to dive into a little bit. We keep hearing that there are more sophisticated attacks on mobile, right? On applications and devices. Why is that? Very, very simple. They have a very active community, right? This is an example of, I don't know if you've heard about Magisk and Frida. Magisk allows you to root a mobile device and hide it, right? And it evades security tools. Traditional tools can't tell, right? Your apps can't tell they're running on an attacker's device who's trying to exploit it. You have Frida. Frida is a hooking tool, which means it's almost like, think about the Matrix, like someone's plugged into your app and monitoring all the app's behaviors to see how an app can be exploited. But all this tooling has a very, very active community, right? They release once a month. So the reason we're kind of talking about this is because when you think about security within your payment applications, the thing to think about is, can your security keep up with this? Or how do you keep up with this? Right? What type of security do you need to keep up with this? Malware. There's a lot of talk around malware, a million articles around malware, right? And when we look at malware, for the payments community, it's important to understand what is it that's changing about malware, right? There are aspects to its evolution that make it something to think about and something to worry about. And if you see some of the characteristics we're seeing, they can steal MFA tokens, they can hide anti-malware apps, detect and evade emulators. So there's a whole bunch of things happening with malware that allow them to do fraud frictionless way, right? They can steal credentials, they can do account takeovers, steal them right from your device. So a lot of things happening in the malware world, and they're focused on frictionless fraud so that you never know what's going on. Platform vulnerabilities. There are a lot of providers that not only provide the payment applications, but also provide the hardware that goes along with it, right? And if it typically Android or some flavor of Android. So it's important for them to understand what is the risk of that device. Is it something to worry about, right? Is it safe? Does it have a critical vulnerability? Do I need to patch it, right? And if I patch it, does my payment app also need to be patched? right? So a lot of this, it's important to understand what is the risk posture of your device at any point in time. Because look at some of the stats, right? Tons of CVEs coming out, and that's not going to change. They've only gone up, right? Zero-day vulnerabilities being produced. Are you being impacted by all of this? Should you care about it? Does it really matter to you? Right? These are some things to start thinking about if you are also providing the hardware. Right? And a big part of what we're doing with our technology is giving people the visibility into this, right? So that they can understand what is their risk. Because the risk is dynamic, right? So, as I mentioned, at this point, we're about 35 different MPoC customers and other customers that have worked with us, gotten through certification, and gotten to the market. Some of the lessons they have learned, and we have learned in that journey with them. 3 of the biggest lessons. 1, static protections provide limited coverage. What does that mean? Today, attack techniques, if someone wants to look inside your application, right? You hear application developers say, well, I obfuscated my code, right? I did something to make it hard to look inside my app. But the techniques today are really, really sophisticated and advanced. So when applying these protections, we tend to use open source, free, whatnot, but they aren't able to keep up with today's sophistication, right? And sometimes that's overlooked. So something you need to keep in mind, right? Be aware of where sophistication is today when you apply this protection. 2, no ability to attest the device on demand. Like I mentioned before, at any point in time, you need to understand the risk posture of the device that your payment app is running on, right? It's one thing if you own the hardware and it's a closed system, but it's a very different problem if you're running on a COTS device because you have no control, right? You downloading a new app on that device, somebody connecting to a questionable network can change the risk posture of that device and can change the risk to the mobile app, to the payments application. 3rd, lack of threat visibility. If something happened to the payment application on the device, if someone tried to tamper it, we ask the question, would you ever know? And 99% of the time, the providers say, we don't know. Would you want to know? Of course you would. Right? If your payment application is being tampered in any manner whatsoever, you should have visibility into that. Right? Because that information will help you secure the app further. Right? Go put security also in the right place because security is not free. Security comes with a cost, right? And it's typically performance. So you can't put infinite security in your mobile app. This visibility helps you protect your payment application the right way from the right threat, right? So these 3 things, as we've gone through with these customers, they've realized they are challenges they cannot ignore, right? Because it's one thing to get certified pre-market, but there are a lot of post-market risks that you have to keep in mind if you want to stay in business. Best practices. 1, multi-layered app hardening. Now, this is like any good security advice, just like for any other device. Mobile apps are no different. You need different layers of protection. Why? Because if you just think about your mobile app, there is code, there is data, there's keys, and there's a bunch of resources. All these things need to be protected because they have unique risks. So it's not one type of protection, it's multiple layers of protection. Continuous monitoring and attestation, like I mentioned. You need a way to monitor all your app installs all the time. You need to know how many of them are running on questionable or compromised devices. Are they connected to a safe network? Right? Is there another app on that COTS device capable of manipulating your app? You need to know these things. Zero-day protection. The reason we find this is really important is there are a lot of security solutions out there that you can select. But a lot of times when you ask them, how do you keep up? If the threat landscape is evolving this quickly, you get a very different set of answers, right? And the one answer you should never settle for is, no, we use some form of signatures. It does not work. The rate at which we're seeing malware evolve and some of the communities evolve these techniques, you need some combination of behavioral, heuristic, maybe some signature, and maybe some machine learning, or even AI tomorrow. Something to find out. How do you protect against zero-day? Last but not least, cryptography. On mobile device, more than anything else, people make the mistake of assuming encryption is security. It is not. Right? Encryption is great, you need it, it makes sense. But when a mobile device is compromised, it can very well compromise your encryption. So something to think about. If you have no control of the device this app gets installed on, how will you make sure your encryption works on all different hardware and OS combinations? How will that work? What do you need to have in your application to feel good about that? Again, these are some of the things we've learned that will matter as you go through certification, as you put your app in the market, and you start seeing attackers try to abuse and tamper your application. So these are things you need to think about. So how are we contributing to this market? One, like I said, we're a mobile security platform, right? We help businesses and payments providers and everyone in the PCI community to really build safe and secure mobile applications, right? And the only way to do it is to build a safe and secure application. And this notion of self-protecting application, what does that mean? What you see on your screen are capabilities that have existed for a long time. It's nothing new about it. The problem that we see more than anywhere else is most applications do one or the other, but don't do all of them. And that's where they get into trouble. So our goal is to, again, help companies and businesses around the world understand the importance of doing all these things to build a layered security strategy, and more importantly, make it easy and frictionless. Because that's the one thing that makes app developers turn away from security, is the cost, right? So again, the whole goal of security, if you're building a mobile application, especially one touching payments, is this notion of build a self-protecting application. Meaning once you build the app and put it out there, especially on a COTS device, it should be able to protect itself. It should recognize an unsafe environment, change its behavior, right? It should know when it's shut down. It should know when not allowed payments. It should know when to kick the logged in person out, right? So our whole vision of what we provide is to help build self-defending payment applications. If you have any questions, again, we're at booth 9, and thank you all for your time.